Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. We have a ton to get into tonight from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. We're going to talk about Max Fried's looming free agency, but we're going to start from a comment made by Paul Allen, the voice of the Minnesota Vikings, that the Falcons prefer Kirk Cousins over Justin Fields, and it's not particularly close.
I think that the first thing that you could take away from this is just how the Falcons feel about their quarterback situation and therefore the roster, that it's ready to compete. Obviously, we know from Steve Weish, Daniel Jeremiah, I think the preference would be to trade up in the draft. They said it, they're going to be aggressive to land one of those top three prospects. Maybe J.J. McCarthy's in that group, but it's assumed that it's Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels because the rookie contract ever so valuable in this league. But if that opportunity doesn't arise, which I think many people believe it's not going to, the next step would be, okay, where do we go? What is our preference? Are we thinking long-term, short-term? And I think that if this report is true, Paul Allen, the play-by-play announcer for the Vikings, been there more than 2 decades, is not just spouting off to spout off. If this is true that the Falcons prefer Kirk Cousins over Justin Fields, there's your answer. They prefer the short-term option and kind of maybe either take a quarterback in the later rounds or J.J. McCarthy later in the first round, trade back up, trade back, or kick the can entirely into 2025. But if this is true, they think they can compete right now with Kirk Cousins. And I don't know if they're wrong.
I'll go even a step further. Raheem Morris was on a show with Keyshawn Johnson, and he said exactly that. He said, this team is a quarterback away, and we've heard this from everybody. This team is a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. They have the pieces in place. And when you look at how wide open the NFC is, I couldn't agree more. And listen, we've said it several times. I mean, Arthur Blank didn't fire Arthur Smith so this team could sit here and keep rebuilding. He fired him because he wanted more wins. He wants to return to the postseason. He wants to chase the Super Bowl as he enters the later years of his entire life. So he fired to win right now. And I think that's a big thing. And now, another thing I want to say is, listen, the Patriots came out. There was a report that said they're going to take a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, and they're going to sign a veteran. The Falcons should do the same thing. Yeah. I don't know if they can't trade, whether they trade up, whatever they do, they should take it because they got to get this thing right, man. We keep saying it's the biggest thing. They should leave no stone unturned. And if they go the free agency route, there's really only 2 options, and Kirk Cousins number 1 and Baker Mayfield number 2. If you have them flipped, I don't blame you. I like the young Bake show. I like it. I like the way he moves. I like his swagger. He could be a longer term option and not be as expensive. Obviously, Cousins is coming off that Achilles injury, and he's going to be 36 years old. But in the same breath, if you're getting the Kirk Cousins that you got last year, that guy in Zach Robinson's offense with more weapons than we had last year, because I guarantee you they're going to add a legitimate number 2. That's a scary thought with everyone returning. Scary thought. That offense is going to be legit.
Yeah, the expectations should kind of, fluctuate with whatever quarterback you get. If it's a rookie or even Justin Fields, I don't think the expectation is to win in 2024. It'd be nice. But if you go out and get a guy like Kirk Cousins, who's probably going to demand a fully guaranteed contract, he has every single year since leaving Washington up until this point. I don't know why anybody would assume differently. The expectation is to not only win the NFC South, but the expectation is probably to at least win one playoff game, especially if you're hosting the very first playoff game in Mercedes-Benz history. That would be what the Falcons do in 2024. So I think that if you go out there and get a guy like Kirk Cousins, Raheem Morris told you, we're a quarterback away. And I think that's pretty
accurate.
Cool. Yeah, obviously it's accurate. Everybody's saying that, but the head coach is saying that. The head coach is saying, we're ready. We're ready. We just need one guy to take us there. And I think, more than anything Falcons fans should take away from this is something that Diana Rossini also talked about of The Athletic, that Justin Fields' trade market isn't nearly as robust as some in the media or fans believe it to be. So I think that Falcons fans who are, of the Justin Fields to Atlanta camp, maybe we should temper expectations, and that's not because everybody kind of assumed it was happening, Chase, because the odds on DraftKings basically guaranteed they were like minus 350 favorites for Justin Fields' next team. And I think that everybody should temper expectations for Justin Fields, and that, yes, it could be one of the B, C, or D plans, but Kirk Cousins could be, and it seems like Paul Allen believes it's higher up.
Yeah, I mean, there was a report from NBC Sports Chicago that the Falcons checked in on him, and that's basically seemed to what shift these odds dramatically. And they would be doing a disservice if they did not check in on him. Like that to me doesn't change anything in how they view Justin Fields. Like if you believe what Steve Weish, if you believe what Daniel Jeremiah, if you believe all these plugged in insiders that say, hey, number one priority, they want to get a quarterback in the draft. If they can't do it, they want to compete right now. I say they do both. I think we're going to do both. I genuinely believe it. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the number 8 overall pick. I don't know if JJ McCarthy will be there. I'm not necessarily as high on Michael Penix, but get Kirk Cousins, draft the guy to learn under him, and ready to roll, man. We got to take shots at this, man. We have not taken shots. That's been my biggest issue with this organization. Bigger than the Rich McKay thing, bigger than the Arthur Blank thing, bigger than all the things we complained about. The fact that they haven't taken shots, legitimate shots at the quarterback position is the number one reason this team has underachieved for I want to say the last 3 years, but really for 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, you want to go through it. Marcus Mariota, the Deshaun Watson thing, I don't really want to touch on that because I don't know. They seemingly took a shot, but
they took a shot.
I don't know. Past the Deshaun Watson thing.
Thank God it didn't land.
Yeah, I mean, talking about a fully guaranteed deal that's not really working out for Cleveland. They looked better with Joe Flacco. Marcus Mariota, stopgap. Ran it back with a stopgap and Taylor Heineke and a third-round pick and Desmond Ridder. I mean, that's just absolutely pathetic. And you want to say, yeah, we got to figure out the position. I think they go overboard this. I agree that coming away with 2 quarterbacks, maybe that's not even overboard. That's we got to figure it out.
That's what you should do.
We got to figure it out. We got to make sure that we figure it out. Or at least we can say we took a shot. That would be nice. Change, which is let's take a shot.
The Falcons organization has been very blessed over the last 2 decades because they had Michael Vick, then they took one bad year with Byron Leftwich and Joey Harrington, and then they got Matt Ryan, and that's basically covered the last 2 decades. Most people watching this show, that's all I remember. That was my entire life. That's not how this works normally, though. It's outside of the Packers and the Falcons in my lifetime, there hasn't been consistent quarterback play in any organization, really, like back to back to back to back. So it takes multiple shots. I mean, look how long it took the Cleveland Browns. They're still working on it. Yeah. They had Joe Flacco's been the best quarterback they've had in 30 years. And how many number 1 picks
they had? The number. Yeah, it seemed like they maybe have figured out with Baker. Yeah, the Browns are an absolutely a perfect example.
But the Jets, I mean, there's so many organizations that have been looking for 30 years. Like, you have to take shots at this. And the fact that the Falcons have kind of just sat on their hands has been very disappointing.
Yeah, the idea, I guess, behind it kind of going off is that and I firmly still believe that Arthur Smith decided to roll with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder because he was pretty much, in his mind, a 4th season was guaranteed. If it didn't work out with them, then he could really go after it, whether it be a trade, free agent, in the draft. I don't know. And I think that was his thinking, and then obviously it bit him in the butt. He made the bet. 3rd-round pick, putting his trust in that 3rd-round pick. I mean, he made his bet. He had to lie in it. It ended up costing him his job. I'm sure he has regrets. But the fact of the matter is the Falcons have built up the roster in anticipation of a quarterback coming along. And you can find a franchise quarterback through trade, free agency, in the draft. Not only the 1st overall pick, there's been plenty of examples of outside. Even Patrick Mahomes went outside of the top 10, or he went 10th, I believe. So I don't necessarily hate how the Falcons have done it, because in theory it should work. Building up the roster, that's kind of how San Francisco has really done it, and the quarterback that's really taken them to the heights. It wasn't the highly touted prospect in Trey Lance. It was Mr. Irrelevant. So, in theory it should work, but let's go after and get a quarterback.
This is the opportunity. Now you have the roster built up. Now you have the cap space. Now you got a guy that we're sitting right here, Kirk Cousins. He is the Matthew Stafford-esque, that late career Aaron Rodgers. He is that acquisition of this offseason. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was playing MVP caliber ball before the season. And if you look at the NFC, I mean, he could be the best quarterback in the NFC.
I was just going to say, and if you're looking at it from Kirk Cousins' perspective, if you're a Vikings fan and you found your way watching this video, let me just paint some of the things that Kirk Cousins is mulling over. Obviously, he's been with Minnesota. O'Connell is a great offensive mind. Justin Jefferson is arguably the top receiver. You got Jordan Addison as well. So there's a lot of great things to like in Minnesota. Like his family is rooted there. They've been there this past 7 years.
Well,
but in that,
wife's from Atlanta.
Yep. I'm about to say, in the same breath, he's got family ties to Atlanta. His wife's parents, his in-laws, live around us right here in Roswell. I think it's Alpharetta.
We should go visit them.
And the NFC South is way more attractive than the NFC North, where you've got the Lions, who just went to the NFC championship game. You got the Packers, who just went to the divisional round, who look like they're an ascending program. And you got the Bears with all this cap space, draft capital, gonna have Caleb Williams. They look like an ascending program. Where you got the Falcons with the Bucks, who did make it to the divisional round, but nobody's confusing them with a true contender. The Saints are just pity-pattying around the cap, the salary cap, and the Panthers, who knows what David Tepper's doing in Carolina. They're pretty much irrelevant in this conversation, though I'm still high on Bryce Young. Where would you rather play? I mean, the surest route, if you're talking about the Vikings or the Falcons to the playoff, it is in Atlanta. It is the NFC South. And I know Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and all those things in O'Connell, but hey, we got a guy named Zach Robinson. We got a guy named Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, an offensive line, a good defense. So I just think that, I've seen a lot of Vikings fans in particular who are just like, what's so much better about Atlanta? It's like, there are some better things in Atlanta than Minnesota.
Yeah, and if you ask Mike Florio, the Bears, they're getting a Hall of Famer in Dan Marino because he sat in a room with Caleb Williams, and that is exactly what every team should be looking at. Who does Mike Florio think when he gets in the room? Screw tape. Screw tape. I get in a room with you 10 minutes. I know if you're going to be the next Dan Marino. That was one of the most ludicrous things. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out Pro Football Talk on Twitter because he thinks Caleb Williams, after a conversation, is going to be a Hall of Famer. I think Kirk Cousins would be a fantastic fit. I think they would be NFC South champions with ease. I don't even think it would be particularly close. And I think they could give everybody a run for their money in the NFC outside of maybe the 49ers. But listen, the 49ers got taken to the brink by the Packers, got taken to the brinks by the Lions, down 24-7. Listen, this NFC is not the AFC. It is wide open, and you never know. You get in the playoffs, you never know what can happen, especially when you have good quarterback play. Coming up after the break, Max Fried should be paying close attention to Blake Snell. We'll talk about it after the break.